Welcome to Single Parent Success Stories, a podcast designed to inspire single parents. Here you'll find resources from self-care to finances to parenting and everything in between. Discover what it takes to thrive. Let the stories inspire you to what is possible. Hello and welcome to Single Parent Success Stories. Today's guest is Lucinda Testo. She is a psychotherapist and a certified Clini-Coach for divorced moms. She has also been a divorced mom herself. Lucinda uses her professional experience coupled with her professional experience to help moms create lives they love after divorce. Welcome, Lucinda. It is a pleasure to have you.
Hi, Irina. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. So please share with us your story. Who you are. How did you become to doing the work that you do now?
Well, I think what inspired me to do the work that I do is I myself have been divorced. I got divorced when my kids were very young. They were 4 years old and 8 months old. It was a very difficult decision to arrive at. I agonized over it for months and months because I had a lot of shame attached to the idea of being divorced. And I have parents that have been married for more than 50 years. So I think I was really trying to hold on to something that just wasn't working. And so when I finally made the decision to proceed with a divorce, while it was the hardest decision I ever made, it was also the best decision I ever made.
And you're so right. We often getting divorced is considered taboo. At least where I was growing up, you stay together for the sake of the kids. You create this facade that everything is working, meanwhile suffering on the inside. And then when kids grow up, they tell, "Oh, we knew you kind of guys weren't getting along. Why did you stake out for so long?"
Absolutely.
And it's difficult. And kudos to you. You 4 years old, and 8 months old. Wow. Mine were my child, second one was 3 months old, and my daughter was 5 years old. So kind of
very similar.
Similar.
Similar. Yeah. It's a whole different ballgame when your kids are that young.
Yeah. What was some of the struggles that challenges, or you didn't have challenges? You kind of were, you knew what you were doing.
I wish I didn't have challenges. There were many challenges. I mean, first of all, I think it was just the sheer utter exhaustion from being a single mom of 2 really small kids. I mean, my daughter was still an infant, and that takes a lot of care, right? Maybe they're not sleeping through the night. My son was in preschool. I had my son in a preschool and my daughter in a daycare. So it was 2 different, drop-offs and pickups. I was working full time. And our custody arrangement was such that I had my kids all but every other weekend. So by the end of the 2 weeks that I had them, it was just sheer exhaustion. So exhaustion was one. And then it was the emotional component. It was the shame around, I'm the first person in my family to get divorced, right? It was like, oh, gee, way to make the family proud. So there was a lot of shame with that. And then I had a lot of guilt because it's not how I saw my life turning out. It's not the circumstances with which I wanted to raise my 2 kids. I wanted them to have a similar upbringing to me where they had, an intact family. So I had a lot of guilt that, I was just going to be this struggling single mom, trying to raise these 2 kids, working more than one job. So, I mean, those are just some of the struggles that I had, especially earlier on.
And what helped you get over shame?
I think there's still flickers of it, if I'm being completely honest. I mean, I'm at this point almost 10 years, I'm 10 years out, more than 10 years out, actually. I think it's just something that it was like a radical acceptance, right? Like my life isn't one where I stayed married to the first person, that I got married to. And it is what it is. My kids have adjusted beautifully. They both do really well. They're happy, they're healthy. And so I think it just, for me, it kind of debunked for me that, you know, it's okay that kids don't come from an intact family. They can still turn out just fine. So I think that's part of what helped me release some of that shame.
Mm-hmm. What helped your kids adjust?
I think it was consistency and it was routine, right? So not only did I go through my own divorce, but I've been a therapist for almost 19 years. And I've worked with countless divorced women also. And I always tell people, it's not necessarily the divorce that quote unquote screws kids up, right? Oftentimes it's parents' behavior within the divorce that is, could be a really difficult time for kids. So I think never speaking badly about my ex to my kids and just keeping things consistent, having routines. I mean, I think that helped them adjust and helped me adjust, right? So having routines and just making sure my kids knew that they were loved and they were safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. What do you think is the most important trait to instill in a child?
The most important
Trait.
strength.
Yeah, trait.
I would say resiliency and helping them know that no matter how hard something is in the moment, like they can absolutely get through it.
I love it.
Because I mean, really, divorce flips your whole world upside down, right? It's kind of like blowing everything to bits, and then you have to kind of put it all together. And so I think just instilling in my kids, like things can get really bad, but you can put your life back together. And sometimes you put it back together even better than it was before.
Yeah. Do you have one example that you can share?
Of, I mean, the divorce is like,
Of
it's a
building
huge
resiliency
example,
into
but,
kids.
of building resilience. I think it's encouragement, right? When they're having a difficult time, right? You validate their difficult time. You kind of explore different ways that, they can get through it, and you just support and encourage.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Good point. Thank you. What kind of advice can you share with single parents who are just stepping onto the journey?
So I would say it's really hard at first. Like I said, it's like your whole world is kind of being blown up into bits, and then you have to like put it together piece by piece.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's okay and it's very healthy to grieve, right? Even if, like, I knew that my divorce was the right decision, but there was still grief around it, right? It was the grief of, for me, it was kind of losing the happily ever after I thought I'd have.
Mm-hmm.
I had a lot of grief around that. So it's okay to grieve. You just don't want to get stuck there. And if you feel like you're stuck, it's okay to ask for help. And while I think friends and family could be a great resource, right? Sometimes friends and family are biased. And sometimes it's better, right, to have more of the unbiased help of either a therapist or a coach. And I think there's nothing wrong with asking for help. And I think when you're newly divorced and you're a single mom, you have to ask for help.
Yeah.
I don't know. Would you agree?
I totally. For me, it was a hard lesson to learn because I'm usually the one helping others, and now
Exactly.
the roles are reversed, and you got to ask for help. And for me, it took a while. What happened last year, I dislocated my knee, and I was alone with my kids, and I realized that if I don't call anybody, nobody's gonna come save me or pick me up because I couldn't get up. I mean, I wasn't bleeding. I looked at myself. I'm okay. I'm breathing. I'm not bleeding. Yeah, I cannot get up. And then kids cannot help me really. Like, what are they?
Right.
So I had to call 911, and I never in my life called 911 before.
Mm-hmm.
It took me a while, like, to get to that, but I realized if I don't do it, then I'm just going to be sitting here a week later.
Right. Well, and I don't know about, what your marriage situation was like, but in mine, like I was kind of the one who did everything. And
Yes.
so when you're kind of used to doing it all on your own, it's very hard to ask for help, right? You don't want to inconvenience people. And it's almost like, I should be able to handle this. Like, I got this, I got this.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important, if I have any message for newly divorced people, it's okay to ask for help, and you should ask for help.
Yeah. You completely, I totally agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like the best advice. Don't go until your last battery burns out.
Right.
Build up upon it so you
And
don't find yourself
oftentimes,
in
yeah.
frustration and being angry, or being so kind of, you don't have the energy anymore to go. Don't wait until you get there.
And oftentimes people want to help, but they don't know what to do to help.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So sometimes just asking specifically, for what you need, people are happy to help.
Yeah. Yeah. And how did the divorce and you became a single parent, did that change your career in any way? Did you start to do
Oh,
something differently from what you used to?
so 100%, yeah. So I have to say, when at the time that I got divorced, I had a job that I really liked. I felt like I was really good at it. And it was a place that I kind of envisioned myself probably working until I retired.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, my situation was such that I was not getting consistent child support from my ex. He had some difficulties. He was getting laid off kind of over and over again, and then he wasn't able to pay me child support. And as a single mom, like, that's terrifying. It's terrifying to be like, oh my gosh, what if I can't pay my mortgage? Or, oh my gosh, what if I can't buy groceries this week to feed my kids? And I feel like I wasted so much emotional energy kind of talking to my ex about, like, have you had any interviews? Any luck yet? Any luck yet? Any luck yet? To the point where I was like, you know what? Like, I think this is a situation where I have to go out and fix this myself. So I'm lucky that I, had a master's in professional counseling. I was, a licensed clinician. And so I started doing psychotherapy private practice on the side, in addition to my 40-hour-a-week job, while also raising 2 small kids by myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I was so angry about the fact that I had to get another job right after everything that I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm a big believer in everything happens for a reason. I ended up doing private practice begrudgingly, but I ended up absolutely loving it.
Mm-hmm.
And so not only was I able to make more than enough to make ends meet, but a few years later, I ended up leaving my corporate job that I was at for almost 9 years and doing my private practice full time.
Mm-hmm.
And then after doing my private practice full time for a while, having gone through my own divorce and working with a lot of men and women that are kind of in that contemplative stage of, do I stay, do I go, or going through divorce. That's kind of when I had the idea to help those people who are post-divorce, where the ink is signed and now they're like, now what?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, now what do I do with my life?
Right.
And so I set up a second business doing post-divorce coaching or divorce recovery coaching, really trying to help women on that journey of, like, rediscovering who they are and, doing the post-divorce rebuild.
Yeah. That's what I'm passionate about, the post-divorce
Yep.
rebuild.
Mm-hmm.
Creating your life, from designing your life, and not saying that I divorced and now my life is going to suck.
Exactly.
Doesn't have to be. We can actually recreate it by building foundation habits.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, that's where kids thrive, to having routines. And I know routines sound boring, but without routines, I think we lose luck. We have lack of clarity.
Right.
And become
100%.
overwhelmed and confused. So establishing that foundation, and then we have that in place, then we can go and dream and think what kind of life we want to create. Who do we want to become? Because life is too short to go on living unhappy and to not follow your dreams, to wait to be happy when you get something next. And
it is.
Actually arriving, because you're never satisfied with where you are today.
100%. And you've created all sorts of amazing things since your divorce.
Yeah.
Do you think you would have created all of that stuff had you not been divorced?
No. Oftentimes we go through life and we don't even examine our life where we are going. We just go do the
Like
job,
you're existing
come
in
back
it.
home,
Yeah.
wake up and repeat the same day over again. And then you arrive at retirement and then you can like, what did I do with my life? Did I truly live, or was I just like a squirrel running the marathon?
Like autopilot. Yeah.
Autopilot, and not even like, because we grow up with an identity, with the idea of this happily ever after, the fairy tale, but history is silent. What happens after happily ever after, and what happens when something doesn't work out? How do you move forward? We are not taught that, how to deal with our emotions or how to have a relationship. I mean, it becomes difficult, and then we have this distortion, the picture in the head and reality that we are living, and when those two don't match, we end up in depression.
Right. But and then you look at kind of what's out on social media, right? And everybody makes it look like they have these beautiful, happy lives, right? And I think people tend to do the comparison factor of like, geez, all these families are happy. I mean, I remember walking around, after I was divorced, my parents had taken my two kids and me to Disney World, right? Happiest place on earth. And I remember walking around, and instead of feeling like so happy and grateful that I was there, that I could share this with my kids, I found myself looking around at all the other like happy, intact families being like, that's not fair. Like, that's what I wanted.
Yeah. I was there too in the Disneyland this recently, but I wasn't looking at it. For me, it was very commercialized, and I kind of was tired afterwards. All the parks, and I don't know if it was because of COVID and we've been indoors, and now you come and there's so many people.
Right. Quite possibly. Yeah, this was several years ago. My kids were like really young.
Yeah, the fairy tale aspect of it. It looks pretty. I've been there, I can check. But you're right. It's like a family place where people come together, and mom and dad. Yeah, it's so true, because we think we want to be like a mom and dad for our kids.
Yeah.
But we cannot really do that. We can just fulfill our own role. Whether you're a single mom or a single dad, you're just gonna do your role. You cannot be both. Exactly. And oftentimes we think we can, and this is how, like, immediately after divorce, how I was thinking that I gotta be a mom and dad and for my kids.
Yep.
So what kind of, if you had to do anything different, if you can go back in the past and give yourself an advice, what would you tell her?
To give myself advice. It may sound corny, but my advice would be like, trust your gut, right? Your gut is never going to steer you wrong. And if something doesn't feel right in your gut, then it's not right. I think in my marriage, I ignored my gut for a long time because I didn't want it to be true. But, things could have been different if I trusted my gut sooner. So I think I got to the point where it's like, no, I think my gut is really leading me in the right direction, and I followed it. So I think I would tell my younger self or anybody else, like, trust your gut.
Yeah. You're
that
so
nagging,
right.
That nagging feeling that's like, something's not right here.
Yeah. Because growing up, we are kind of taught to think and to rely more on our brain, not more on our gut or figures of authority in our life. So if somebody says something, you gotta go and do it like that. But we choose to ignore our own inner voice and our own inner wisdom for some reason.
Absolutely.
So yes, totally. Listening to your gut is great. I actually had a guest on a podcast early on who dedicated his life to teaching people to listen to their inner gut after something happened. A friend passed away because he didn't listen to his gut, his intuition.
Yep.
So that was an interesting episode. What is the smallest thing you've done that had the biggest impact in your life so far?
Smallest thing I've done that's had the biggest impact. Oh, great question. I don't know. I feel like divorce has kind of been one of the biggest things that made like a big impact, but the smallest impact, I think it's just like being consistent with my kids, right? It's something small that I do every day that has helped them kind of be confident and self-sufficient and resilient kids, is just kind of like that love and that consistency every day.
Yeah, that's small, it's a daily thing, but that's what kind of builds up and produces something better later on.
Yep.
What are you passionate about?
Oh, what am I passionate about? So I'd say personally, both of my kids play sports, and I never played sports growing up, but both of my kids play sports, and I love going to watch my kids play the sport that they love. Like, they're both super passionate about it. And even though I didn't grow up playing sports, like I love having that experience, being a parent, watching on the sidelines, rooting for my kids, seeing how proud it makes them to do well. Professionally, I mean, I love what I do professionally. You know, I have my therapy private practice, and I've got my divorce recovery coaching business, and I just love, I don't know, like, my private practice name is Unlimited You. And I chose that name years ago because I feel like we are all truly like unlimited in our capabilities and possibilities and things like that. So helping people kind of tap into that. And then on the other side with the divorce recovery coaching, which I'm sure you can also attest to this, just, you know, helping women come from that place of like pain and grief, of like, now what do I do?
Yeah.
And just help them on that like journey of transformation to figuring out who they are again, you know, now that they're not a wife, right? Who are they at their core? And figuring out what they want to create next in their life. You know, if they are interested in dating or getting married again, like, what kind of partner do you want and need, instead of just kind of mindlessly dating? So just helping bring people down that journey of like self-discovery and rebuilding, like I said, sometimes even better than before.
Yeah, you're so right. How did you encourage your kids to be in sports, even though you weren't when you were growing up? What happened?
Well, I have to say, for my son, who's my older one, when he was in preschool, there was like another mom in preschool who's like, "Oh, you should sign your son up for this Saturday morning soccer clinic." And I was like, "Okay." So I signed him up, and he just happened to be really good at soccer. That's when he was 4 years old. And he's now 15, and he plays soccer year round, and he loves it.
Awesome.
And then my daughter, for her, it was more of like, you know, watching TV can't be your after school activity, so you need to pick something to try. And she picked field hockey, and she's 11. She's been doing it for 4 years, and she absolutely loves it.
I love it. Because I tried with my kids. We did soccer, kind of didn't stuck.
Yep. Every kid is different.
I'm looking like, what did you do to?
Like I said, I think it was just like they had like a natural aptitude for the sport that they happened to try, but I don't think that's the case for every kid, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
My kid is doing ballet and like dance, and
Nice.
They don't have too many boys in there. It's him and another boy and a bunch of girls, but he's very kind of artistic like that. But soccer didn't work out.
Yep, that's okay. That's okay.
What makes your heart sing?
Ooh, what makes my heart sing? All right, I'm going to be corny again. Daily gratitude makes my heart sing.
Not
I've
course.
got my own I've got my own history of depression, and for a long time, probably up until like my early 20s, I had more of that like victim mentality of like, why is this happening to me? This isn't fair, everything else.
Mhm.
And somewhere along the way, I've been able to kind of shift my mindset to one that's of like more about gratitude, right? So instead of focusing on what my life doesn't have or what's not working out, I focus on all of the things that are working out, that are good, and there's stuff to be grateful for every day, even if it's tiny, small, and minute. And so for me, I think daily gratitude has probably been one of the most life-changing things that I've added to kind of my daily routine that has made the biggest impact. And I would say that's absolutely what makes my heart sing. That's what keeps me going. And I preach it to my clients, for my kids around the dinner table. I'm always asking them, tell me one thing you're thankful for, one way you help somebody today, because I want to instill that in them as well.
Yeah, and nothing corny about that. That's amazing. I do that too. It's one of my practices as well. And you're
Mm-hmm.
so right. Even in the midst of a difficult situation, there is always things that are working that we're not paying attention, because our mind always jumps to conclusion. It jumps to the things that aren't there, that aren't working, that are missing, that we miss the big picture. We miss all the amazing things that are present and available. The fact that we are alive, or the fact that we are breathing or walking. I took walking for granted until I couldn't walk because
Couldn't.
of my knee.
Right.
And it's like a simple thing that you expect, like taking a sip of water and expecting the water to flow down your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Those things that we take for granted. So yeah, that's amazing practice to have. Is there anything exciting going on in your life right now that you want to share? Any new program you're launching, or book you're writing, or anything that you like to share?
So I think my little bit of a longer term goal is definitely to write a book. I love writing. But I have over the last year created a group coaching program, and it's called Move On After Divorce, Designing Your Next Best Life. And Move On is actually like an acronym for a program that's similar to kind of what I was describing before, brings women from a place of, I call it being like stuck in the muck, kind of through this like transformative journey to rebuilding their new life. So I will be offering that program again in January. Um, and yeah, that's kind of what I've been working on recently.
That sounds exciting. Thank
Mm-hmm.
you. Is there anything I haven't asked that you would like to share?
Um, I think the only other advice that I would share is, or that I would encourage single parents is, after your divorce, like really take the time to get to know yourself again. Because I'm not sure how you felt, but after being married for however many years, I was with my ex. I think we were married for 6.5, but together for just over 10. Sometimes you lose yourself, right? Being a wife and a mom and things like that. And when you get divorced, there's like a bit of a loss of that identity. And like take the time to like dig deep and figure out like, or remind yourself who you are at your core, what you enjoy doing, what lights you up, what feels good. And I think taking the time to do that is super important. So I guess that's probably the other message I'd want to share.
Yeah, you're so totally right. I had the loss of identity. I didn't know who I was anymore. And I rediscovered myself and discovered parts of me I didn't know I have. The fact that I'm
Mm-hmm.
speaking to you now, I was an introvert. So I joined Toastmasters and actually won second place competition
That's
in the humorous
amazing.
story. This was a kind of 3 or 4 years ago. And another great thing that happened, I learned how to sing. And that was the biggest kind of because I was able to sing what I couldn't speak. It opened up my voice, and I wasn't very articulate in expressing how I feel. I oftentimes choose to how you call it, stay quiet for the peace of keeping peace, as opposed to having an outburst or something like that. So I wasn't very argumentative.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing I learned. And
I
so
love
many
that.
incredible other things like dancing and painting. And I became more artistic and creating this podcast, writing
Yeah.
books that wasn't even a possibility before, is a possibility now. So I see it as a life after divorce can be a person's ability to rediscover who they are or create who they are, because we can create who we are. Every single day we have this opportunity to create how we want to feel, because yes, events are going to happen in our life, negative events, traumatic events, but it's all a matter of how we respond to what happens, to whether we choose to be sad, angry, miserable. It takes the same amount of energy. So
Yeah.
it's up to us to choose. And oftentimes it's difficult where you're in the middle of it, you're surrounded by it, that's all you
Yeah.
really see. It's difficult to get another perspective, to see that there are other things that are happening as well.
Well, and divorce is the end of a chapter. It's not the end of your story,
Yes.
you
Yeah.
know? And like I said in the beginning, like sometimes divorce could actually be the best thing that ever happened to you. And that was definitely the case for me.
Yeah.
100%.
Is there something you discovered about yourself after divorce?
I think I just realized how incredibly strong I am and that I'm really capable of anything. I never in a million years saw myself as any sort of entrepreneur. I was like, I'm a really good employee, right? Show up, do my job, do my best. I'm a very hard worker. I never, ever saw myself being any sort of entrepreneur. And now I have two businesses. And right, I went from leaving a marriage where, my ex almost bankrupted me, right? And I had tons of financial issues. And now, like, I'm living a much more comfortable life. So, yeah, I amaze myself.
That's the best part. You gotta
It
be your
is.
own cheerleaders.
It
Don't
is.
wait for other people to cheer you on. Cheer yourself on.
Yeah. And we're capable of amazing things if
Yeah.
we believe it.
Yeah. Yeah. If people would like to connect with you, learn more about you, where would they go?
So, I mean, I've got a free Facebook group, I have an Instagram page, but the easiest place to probably send people is my website, which is www.lucindatesto.com.
Thank you so much for
Uh,
coming on and
Thank
sharing
you, Irina.
your advice, your wisdom, your life with us. It was a pleasure.
Yes, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.